Good intro for me. Yeah, hello. I haven't seen you guys up here in a minute since the first week, so I'm back. I am doing the second to last sermon for our Come and See series. Hopefully you guys have realized that we're doing a series and you haven't been like, oh, that was nice every week. I wonder what that was about. But yeah, this is continuing on. And I want to start off a little bit different today. I feel like I'm ringing a little bit. Am I ringing? Which one is this?
3.
Yeah, there we go. Why does this keep asking for a password? Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, I want to start off a little bit different tonight. I'm not going to tell you yet what we're talking about. Instead, I want to do a little imagination experiment. You guys remember when you were kids and you're sitting on the ground in whatever group thing, and the person's like, all right, everyone close your eyes, and we're going to go on a journey. No? Well, I was on cold, so maybe I don't. Okay, so close your eyes. We're going to do this. Here's the scenario. You've just been told that you are about to go and meet Jesus. I don't mean death, so don't freak out. I just mean you're about to go get transported to meet him. So you don't really know much. Someone picks you up in a taxi for some reason. That's the transport mechanism. And the taxi driver tells you you're going to arrive at this great big hall, like one of those ones from like medieval times. Not like medieval times where you go eat a turkey leg, but like back in the day, medieval times. Think like Game of Thrones or something like that. There's going to be a great big hall. There's going to be a lot of people there, and you're going to get to see Jesus. You're going to get to meet him. And so you ride in a taxi, and then you immediately fall asleep. So you have no idea how you end up there, but you end up there, and you get out and you walk. The taxi drops you off right at the front staircase or whatever, and you walk in. So now I just want you to like get this image in your head. So picture whatever hall you want to picture. I want you to picture the stones. There's big windows. There's light coming in, maybe some stained glass. There's 100 or so people in there, crowded. It's really quiet though. No one's really talking, and you can't really see. For some reason, in this scenario, you are extremely short. So everyone is kind of in front of you. It's hard to see over them. And so you are just wondering like what you're going to see once you get through this crowd of people. What's Jesus going to look like? So you wait and it's quiet, and you finally kind of get some headway. People start to part, and it seems like people are kind of getting a chance to meet him and talk to him. And finally it comes to you, it comes to your moment. The crowd parts for the last row, and you get to see Jesus. You look up, and there he is right in front of you. Okay, pause. I want you to take a mental picture of what you think Jesus looks like right there. And I want you to hold on to that for a second. Actually, for a while. I want you to hold on to that for a while. Okay? All right. We can continue. You can wake up. So I'm going to start tonight with a confession. Is that I do not really like Marvel movies. I really don't. I don't. Yep. Now I have watched, I think mostly all of them, maybe like 90% of them. And you've probably heard this before if you've talked to me, so some of you are bored already. But yeah, I mean, I just don't like them. I could go into details, but it would be embarrassing on my part to try to explain it. I just don't really like them. I kind of enjoy it while I watch them, like in the theater or whatever. But when I leave, I feel like I've eaten like a bunch of fruit roll-ups, you know? Like I feel a little wild, I feel a little crazy, but I'm still pretty hungry, and I've got a bunch of stuff stuck in my teeth, and it's just not like a great after feeling. But somewhat recently I was reflecting on like my disdain for them. Yeah, disdain's I guess stronger. But I came to a couple conclusions. I'm going to share those with you. One is that nobody likes a snob, and so I need to get over it for a little bit. And two is that despite my misgivings, on some kind of basic level, I believe in Marvel movies. I believe in them. Not like I believe they exist. Like obviously I believe they exist. But I mean I share like a certain value that I see in them. We have some common ground. It's a value that plays out over and over again in these movies, and multiple of them with multiple of their characters. It's consistent. And let me focus in on one example. I don't want to hear about spoiler stuff. You guys have had plenty of time. It particularly shows up with the character of Iron Man. So Iron Man, if you guys have seen, or if you haven't, I'm about to ruin it all for you. But basically, he's a rich playboy in the beginning. You know, he's got like stuff that most of us, I think, would think is pretty awesome. Like, he's got an awesome house, that's right. And he's got this like freaking cool AI system that like he can tell to do anything. It's like one of my dreams, because I know that this AI is like closed circuited, not like the Amazon is listening to you AI kind of thing. But like this is like legit in his house doing whatever he needs. And it has a cool accent and stuff. I just love it. But he's also just, I mean, he's selfish, he's arrogant, he's rude. He's funny, he's very smart. He's kind of got this like Tesla vibe. What's that guy, Musk? Yeah. Ooh, that's bad to just say his last name. I had never realized that. That's not a good shorthand for Elon. But yeah, so he's got that kind of going on in the beginning, right? But over the course of these movies, I mean, there's a lot where he's in them. I don't know how many. The character changes, right? He slowly but surely changes. Throughout his experiences and his relationships, he goes from this self-absorbed a-hole, we can say it, to the character who sacrifices everything. Everything he possibly can for no personal gain to himself. So there's this portrayal in these films of this ultimate sacrifice being born out of a hero who is willing to give up everything. And so I just think I've realized at this basic level, Marvel and I believe in the same thing. We believe in sacrifice. And it's not just in that movie, it's not just with that character, it's not just in Marvel. Just using that as an example. It's shared in other superhero movies, other movies and TV shows in general, other stories that we love, books, even things that we hear about from other people in our life. A consistent tear-inducing device. Sacrifice. Someone who gives up everything for the sake of other people. And so I think that should jump out at us, and we should ask maybe why. Why do these stories consistently get to us? If we've heard this over and over again, maybe with different characters, why do we still get moved by it? Why aren't we tired of it? And it's true in real life, right? We honor people who sacrifice. We look to them with gratitude and awe sometimes. You know, we have people who give their lives in public service or in different careers that are dangerous. We have leaders of movements throughout history who have changed societies, but it's often cost the leader very dearly. And we honor those people, right? And rightly so. See, I think at some level we are really drawn to sacrifice. We are moved by it. And so then, after the why, I start thinking about, okay, so what does sacrifice look like for my life? Evaluate, where do I not sacrifice? The closest, most recent story I could think of that was like where I don't was this last week. My wife and my son were, just my wife. My wife was off, she was shooting a wedding. She's a wedding photographer. And I was watching Jude. And I'd gotten up a little bit later, like right as she was leaving, and I come in and I'm watching Jude, and there's this towel on the floor by the table, and I look at it, I'm like, I don't understand why there's just a random towel. And then I'm playing with Jude, I don't worry about it. And then I come back over to her later, and I'm getting why this towel? I don't understand this towel. I'm thinking about it, but I don't do anything about it. Finally, I look up under the towel, and there's moisture and scrambled eggs underneath this towel. And I'm just internally what the, why is there this nasty towel on the floor with eggs and crap in it? I don't understand. How could you do this to me? But I I don't know how long, but way too long, I had this internal battle of I don't want to clean that up, that's disgusting, I don't know why she left that there, just being a total jerk, she was up earlier than me with this kid who's being crazy, all the time now, and I'm just internally that's just not right for me to clean that up, I don't know, that doesn't feel right, I just think I better wait for her to come home. But I did clean it up, oof, okay, we're good, but for way too long I really debated on it. It's so dumb, right, it's such a small thing. And it took me way longer than it should have to convince myself that I should just do something about it. But I think that's a lot of us, right? For each of us, I bet if we could rewind your life last week, there'd be maybe at least one cringeworthy moment either in your thoughts or in your actions, where you chose not to do something or say something out of this aversion to sacrificing something, however small or large. And hopefully there's also stories where we could choose to sacrifice. I just didn't want to come up here and talk about all those because I feel like I'd lose my audience pretty quick. So yeah, tonight, it's obvious now. We're talking about sacrifice. The title of the sermon is Come and See the God Who Sacrifices. Come and see the God who sacrifices. So I've been talking a lot about superheroes and stories and the way this is kind of portrayed in our culture and in our minds, but now I want to take a step back. I want to take this idea of sacrifice and look at it through the lens of Scripture in a few key passages. So Jesus spent 3 years in active ministry, right? And his ministry was marked with stories called parables. They were confusing to his audience. They're confusing to us. He taught on the kingdom of God, right? Drew talked about that in our second week doing this series. How the kingdom of God was coming. It was overlapping with the kingdom of earth. Jesus had all these moments in his ministry of healing people. Stephen talked a lot about him seeing people, him spending time with these people who were overlooked, and him doing miraculous things and even just mundane things to show them love. He restored people. He called people out of hypocrisy and sin. It was an utterly remarkable life by any marker. And if you talk to people who've read the Gospels a lot, everyone kind of has their favorite Jesus moments. You know, there's people love the woman caught in adultery story. There's the scene in the temple with Jesus flipping tables. It's usually a certain crowd that really likes that one. There's the blind man, you know, there's the bleeding woman. There's the woman at the well, like we talked about. All these stories reveal God to us in different ways. And reading and hearing these stories should reshape our understanding of God. They should help us get a correct view of God. God is revealed in Jesus, right? So these stories shape our understanding of God, and they ingrain in our minds what God's character is. But what I'm here to tell you tonight is that the most important story to our understanding of Jesus is the cross.
Amen.
We should return to this story over and over. It should not get old to us. We should reflect on it. We should pray on what it should mean for us regularly. Sometimes I think the cross story is misunderstood, or the theology around it. We get this kind of warped view of God as someone who is angry with the world. He's so angry with the world, so outraged with the people in the world that aren't following every letter of his law, that he just had to come up with a plan B, right? He's like, all these people, I've got to do something. It's this idea that God realized at some point things were looking desperate, and I guess he better just send his son since nothing else was working. Almost like let's see if this will fix it. We have to be really careful with that kind of view. There's a couple big problems with it. One, what does John 3:16 say? Does it say God so hated the world and all its sinfulness that he got desperate and he sent his son to fix it? No, it says God so loved the world that he gave his son. It was love that compelled God. The cross is not plan B. The cross is not some afterthought, not some desperate measure. The cross is the full revelation of God, and it was his character on full display. In the book of 1 Peter, he reflects on this point, that this was all part of the plan from the beginning. He says in 1 Peter 1, starting in 18, "For you know that it is not with perishable things, such as silver or gold, that you were redeemed from the empty way of life, handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, the Lamb without blemish or defect. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake." Peter's saying, Jesus, all of that was in plan before the creation of the world. And it was that which revealed God. So if the God of the universe is revealed in Jesus, and the revelation of God is in there, then the cross is where our view of who God is should start. The cross is God saying there is nothing more powerful than sacrifice that comes from love. Nothing more powerful Let's unpack this idea of it being powerful. It's this idea of this power in the cross that allows Paul in 1 Corinthians to make these arguments to people in Corinth about what is truly showing wisdom. He makes this statement early on in this 1 Corinthians letter where he says, I came and I resolved to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. There's trouble brewing in Corinth. There's these competing factions within the church. People who are saying, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos, or I follow this guy. They were competing and they were measuring each of these leaders based on their charisma, based on their wisdom, based on what kind of things they told them to do and how they carried themselves. And Paul knows that coming in, and he says, I came and I talked about nothing but the cross. Jesus Christ and Him crucified. That's all I had to do. You see, he's addressing something in this Corinthian church that we need to realize gets repeated in the human heart over and over again. It's that we get blinded to the reality of who God really is. And we think that we will discover His power and the key to being like God through some other path than sacrificial love. We look for other ways. These people were divided over wisdom. What makes wisdom true and good? They're divided over spirituality. What is true spirituality? Who among us is more spiritual? Who among us is wiser? How do we attain this new level of spirituality that the philosophers in our world are talking about? They're arguing about who understands things best, who communicates best, who they should all follow based on all of these measurements. And they're just playing into the ideas of the philosophers of the age. These are people who wanted to find and discover hidden knowledge and lead from this place of power and wisdom once they found it. It led to this idea called Gnosticism, which has just permeated the world for centuries since in different ways. But to the philosophers, they see the hidden, and they think as they explore the hidden, the mystery, and this glory side of God, the kind of unphysical, out there in the cosmos, ideas-based, that's where they're going to find their true wisdom and understand God's power. But Paul comes and he is dismantling all of that. He says, my message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith may not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power. And he later says, do not deceive yourselves. If any of you think you are wise by the standards of this age, you should become fools by the standard of this age, is what he's saying. For the wisdom of the world is foolishness in God's sight. So when Paul wants to come and set the so-called wise men of his day in their place, he claims he needs no other tool than to teach them that Jesus Christ came and was crucified on the cross. The cross, which is viewed as God's foolishness to the wise men in Corinth and elsewhere, Paul says that is the ultimate display of wisdom and love and power of the one true God. You know, as a kid, I think this is true for a lot of us, we didn't really understand our parents. A lot of what they did seemed random and kind of hard to tell, like, why are they doing this? And a lot of us, I think that is how we view God's plan on the cross. We go to this, well, maybe plan A didn't work. Maybe God just had to do something drastic. How unfortunate. But guys, if we do that, we miss what God is really doing in the cross. He's revealing something core about what it means to be like Him. You're not going to be like God if you are chasing your own wisdom or the wisdom the world offers. You're going to be stuck with those people in Corinth. You're not going to be like Him if you just want to get rich, have the economic power. You're not going to be like Him until you learn to sacrifice and you learn to love. And that is the ultimate wisdom that comes from God. That is the ultimate revelation of who God is. And I think it's embedded in the way that the created world works. There are no shortcuts to this. I want to go back to that imagination experiment we did in the beginning. So close your eyes again, get that mental image back up. What we imagined is actually part of what actually happened to John and what is written in the book of Revelation. It's in the early part of the book. John is taken up to the realm of the kingdom to see the throne room of God, and he recounts in Revelation what he saw. So we left off you picturing Jesus as you walk up to the throne room. So close your eyes again, get that in your head. And I'm going to read to you what this Revelation passage says and what John actually sees. Revelation 5, starting in verse 5, it said, "Then I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll with writing on both sides and sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a mighty angel proclaiming in a loud voice, 'Who is worthy to break these seals and open the scroll?' But no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth could open the scroll or even look inside of it. I wept and wept because no one was found who was worthy to open the scroll or look inside. Then one of the elders said to me, 'Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and its 7 seals.' Then I looked up and saw a lamb, looking as if it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne. The lamb had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth." Okay. That is the image of Jesus. I don't want us to miss this. This is so significant to the Christian faith. Thrones represent seats of power, ultimate symbols of all power, right? Think of the Iron Throne in Game of Thrones, if you've seen that. Whoever sits on it has all the power. And here, John is taken up to see what stands at the very center of this seat and symbol of power. The elder says to him, "Look and see the lion." That's the first thing the elder says. There's going to be a lion. But when John actually looks, in the place of the lion is a lamb looking like he had been slain. Did any of us picture that when we imagine what Jesus looked like? If you did, good. But for the rest of us, who I think probably didn't, that's what we should see. This is central to the depiction of Jesus. It's the very center of God's heart, if you will. That's what the imagery is conveying. It's this image of sacrificial love. There is no lion. There is just a lamb. Now I think maybe you see why this is considered foolishness to those who thought they were wise. A lamb, if you've ever seen one, it doesn't look strong. It doesn't look right. It doesn't look powerful. But when our God came in the flesh, we see his power, what he does with his power. And what he does is he sacrifices. So, if you want to know what God is like, remember that what is at the heart of God, the center of the throne, is a lamb looking like he had been slain. So here's my main idea. I don't have 3 points. I just have 1 point for all these verses and then 1 point of application here in a minute. So my 1 point here is when we see the God who sacrifices, we see what God is really like. When we see the God who sacrifices, we see what God is really like. So then the question, I think, is what do we do if we're followers of Jesus? And I think this is where it gets hard. I mentioned the egg story. It's so hard, so difficult to pick up that towel. But I think on these bigger scales, the superhero movies, and I think part of what struck me as I thought about those is how much we all love those. I mean, look at the money these things rake in. We love these stories. And yet let's be honest, we avoid almost all kinds of pain and discomfort throughout our daily lives. Which I get. I do too. But I think we have to realize it's building habits of little sacrifices that can lead to the big stuff later on. Mm-hmm. Nobody just wakes up one day and does this stuff. Jesus didn't ask his followers to die for him on day 1. But he did challenge them over time to grow up into the kind of people who could eventually make the sacrifices necessary to carry on the church after he left. But that could have never happened without them learning how to imitate him. One of the things God has challenged me to sacrifice over the years is a lot of things related to my personality. I'm much more naturally introverted than I probably even give off. I grew up pretty shy and quiet. I love my me time, you know what I mean? And when I first started doing this job I think 6 years ago, I think around there, I quickly realized that this kind of new life working in ministry full time was either gonna, be done very poorly if I wanted to just accommodate my preferences, or I was gonna need God to really grow me and stretch me. And over the years, the latter is what's happened, thank God. So before, on any given week, at least 15 hours of alone time felt like a minimum. Now, on weeks lately, if I get a couple of hours here or there in my week, it's a good week in that regard. But I'm not saying that because I'm mourning that life I lived before. I get to be with the people of God. I get to be on mission on this campus. And what for so long honestly felt like a very painful sacrifice, and this change in me over time was painful. What was revealed was something much better. I was giving up a lot of garbage time, honestly, and letting God replace it with much more meaningful ways to spend my hours. And I really did I think I bought into this personality is fixed kind of stuff, or it's relatively fixed. I thought surely something like that would not be something that I'd be called to sacrifice. But I think when I start there, and when any of us start there, we're limiting what we're willing to give up. Yeah. And I think we have to ask, is that really imitating Jesus? Did he limit what he was willing to give up? So I had to ask myself these questions in order to learn to sacrifice. Things like, do I see people as more valuable than just my time? My alone time? Do I see what I consider to be just basic parts of me as more important than imitating the sacrificial love of God? I'm not saying this is like a complete U-turn. I still enjoy my alone time when I get it. But I'm also not chained to it. You know what I mean? It doesn't have a hold on me like it used to. And I can also trust God to take care of me if I do give it up for something that he wants me to do in order to love people. So I think I learned that sometimes being an introvert is just kind of a convenient way of getting around sacrificing. But that's just one for me. I don't know what it'll be for you. But what I'm asking you to do tonight is, if you're a follower of Jesus, I need you to commit to sacrifice. If sacrifice is the image that sits at the center of the throne room, it's the very heart of God, then I'm very confident it's not an optional part of following Jesus. So my only other point is a point for application. It says when we choose to look like Jesus, we choose to sacrifice. When we choose to look like Jesus, we choose to sacrifice. It's inherent in the decision. I think that's why Jesus tells us to count the cost. So here's a couple areas in our sphere that I want to specifically ask you to consider. One of them is around boundaries. And I know I'm entering a kind of touchy area. It's very popular. I'm not talking about boundaries if you're dating. That's a different thing. It is don't sacrifice those. Although I do get a lot of people asking if they can sacrifice those. It's not the kind of sacrifice that will be most beneficial for you. It's very popular right now to be very concerned about our boundaries with other people. And I just say we need to be very careful with that. Let's just assume for a minute I'm not talking about actual abusive relationships. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people we find difficult, or that grate on us, or that we think are toxic. And maybe we haven't totally evaluated what we mean by toxic, but we use that as a catch for stuff. So I need us as followers of Jesus to think about this from a biblical perspective on how we're actually supposed to handle relationships. So any consideration of the world's wisdom about boundaries, I'm asking you to filter it first through Jesus and not the other way around. So for all the wisdom that we hear around that, wisdom of the world there, I'm not saying all of it's bad. I'm saying we need to consider the way in which we are called to bear with one another in love. We need to consider the way we are called to forgive people, to show mercy, to forgive debts that people have racked up against us. And I mean that, I hope you get what I mean. I mean socially. To sacrifice our preferences, to extend ourselves in order to love people better. And I'm not going to make any sweeping statements about we should never do this or always be friends with everyone forever. But I just want to emphasize that I think we should be a little skeptical of how much emphasis there is on this idea right now. A lot of the wording around it, if you look at it, doesn't sound much like the Jesus we're called anyway. And I think we also miss something there, because I think if people compiled our thoughts and actions together and we all sat around and watched a film on that and judged whether any one of us were difficult, I think we'd all get cut. We're all difficult in some ways. I'm not saying there's not differences. We need to remember the ways in which people have borne with our burdens, given us mercy and forgiveness, been good friends to us when we weren't good friends back. We can't outsmart God and play to this different wisdom and be less gracious and merciful and loving than he is and think that that is really going to work. So my question is our wisdom of boundaries and eliminating difficulty from our life greater than his wisdom of sacrifice? It's apparently his most powerful method to show people who he is and that he loves them. Is any of that better than his love and his forgiveness for people? Is any of that better than him bearing with us? I don't think so. I think you can read the parable of the debtor again if you doubt that. So, that's the first one. You can take a sigh of relief. I'm done talking about that for now. Second area would be in regards to us being a people of commitment. And I see this pop up a lot too. I call it the maybe problem. It can take a lot of forms. But it's kind of around us just kind of avoiding committing or going back on committing, usually in regards to our time. If someone asks us to get lunch or come to something or be consistent in meeting and studying together, we'll throw a for sure up front and then back out later, or we'll maybe say, I'll check my schedule, or I'll see what my homework looks like, or things like that. And all those things I think are legit. I think you should check your schedule. I think you should do your homework. But I think what I also see is that we have this hesitancy to stake out this promise of I'm going to be there. I'm telling you I'm going to be there and I'm going to be there. It may be a sacrifice in your time and in your schedule. But I think that's a sacrifice we should learn to make. So if it's just an unwillingness to commit and sacrifice, let's grow out of that. Yeah. Let's be people who live generous, sacrificial lives. Start with the people right around you. Start small. Be faithful in the little things, and then watch as God grows you. So, sum it all up. We want to become people who look like God. And at the very heart of God is sacrificial love. It's his ultimate display of who he is. So to imitate him, we learn to sacrifice. And again, when we choose to look like Jesus, we choose to sacrifice. I'm going to pray. Worship team, y'all can come on up. God, we just thank you for revealing yourself to us in this way, for showing us the way that you love, for showing us the way that you give. Help us to learn how to do that. Help us to stretch and grow up into that. In your name,